What if the Cold War became World War III, the day humanity almost ended? October 27, 1962. The world is only minutes away from ending. Deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, a Soviet submarine hides in total darkness. Its crew has stayed underwater for days, cut off from all contact with Moscow, with no way to learn what unfolds on the surface above them. The only certain information they possess is that American warships have fully surrounded their vessel. Temperatures inside the submarine keep climbing. The air grows thin and hard to breathe, and every crew member is worn out from exhaustion. Then a horrifying transmission arrives, warning them that full-scale war may have already broken out. Stored inside the submarine lies a nuclear warhead powerful enough to wipe an entire city off the map, leaving its commander trapped with an impossible choice: launch the missile, or hold fire and wait for confirmation. Far above the ocean's waves, millions of ordinary people carry on with their daily routines without any inkling of the catastrophe looming overhead. Families sit down for dinner, children lie asleep in their bedrooms, and pedestrians wander city streets, completely unaware that humanity teeters on the brink of total extinction. In our real timeline, the submarine never fired its weapon, allowing the world to pull back safely and keeping the Cold War from escalating into open combat. Yet history is shockingly fragile. The line separating global peace from utter annihilation rarely hinges on massive armies, ruling governments, or large-scale battles. Sometimes, everything comes down to a single individual and one irreversible choice. But what if that choice went the other way? What if the missile was released into the sky? What if overwhelming fear overpowered rational thought? What if the Cold War spiraled into World War III? In this alternate timeline, October 27 marks the permanent turning point of human history. As the Soviet submarine carries out its launch order, the missile surges upward from the ocean depths, hanging in the sky for several terrifying minutes while the whole world is left guessing its intent. Is this a tragic accident, a deliberate unprovoked attack, or the opening salvo of a far larger global conflict? American defense systems immediately detect the incoming warhead, leaving military commanders with only a handful of minutes to act, armed with incomplete intelligence and no way to confirm the full situation. For decades, both superpowers prepared extensively for this exact crisis, constructing reinforced underground bunkers, building global early warning satellite networks, training specialized military personnel, and drafting comprehensive contingency plans for the worst-case nuclear scenario. Still, no official strategy could address the most critical question of all. What unfolds when panic humans hold the power to erase civilization entirely? The president faces two devastating options: delay retaliation and risk complete national ruin, or strike back immediately and trigger the worldwide war everyone has spent generations dreading. Within this alternate reality, the order to counterattack is issued without hesitation. In the space of a few hours, Soviet leadership concludes that the United States has launched a full, unconstrained nuclear assault against their nation, forcing them to confront the same brutal dilemma of waiting or retaliating. They prioritize the survival of their homeland. Yet this desperate drive for self-preservation only unleashes unending destruction. The Cold War reaches its abrupt end, not through negotiated peace, but because the long-feared global war has at last ignited. For generations, public imagination pictured World War III starting with mass ground troops crossing national borders. Yet this conflict unfolds in an entirely different fashion. It begins with blaring emergency alarms, glowing crisis computer screens, urgent midnight phone calls inside shadowed command rooms, and distant officials making life-or-death choices that will dictate the fate of millions of innocent civilians. Across the European continent, military divisions mobilize rapidly. NATO activates every pre-planned defensive operation, while the Soviet Union readies its full retaliatory force, turning a region split along ideological lines for nearly 20 years into the primary battlefield of a new global war. Germany becomes the central front, the same land that bore witness to two catastrophic world wars now facing a third wave of deadly combat. This time, however, humanity has engineered a weapon far more devastating than any prior armament, one designed not merely to defeat opposing soldiers, but to eliminate the entire potential for a livable future. At the conflict's earliest stages, both sides attempt to avoid deploying nuclear devices, clinging to the belief that they can contain the fighting and secure victory within limited conventional battle zones. War operates by a ruthless, unpredictable logic. Though once combat commences, it almost never adheres to pre-written battle plans. A major city falls to enemy occupation, a critical military outpost is reduced to rubble, a field commander fears loss of operational control, or national leadership receives fragmented, misleading updates. Every single response sparks a new hostile action. Every counterattack fuels further retaliation. sending the whole planet into an unstoppable chain reaction of destruction. The first day of World War III stretches on as the longest, most agonizing day in all human history. At sunrise, most citizens still cling to the belief that they remain safe from harm. By midday, national governments roll out mass emergency evacuation protocols. By evening, millions of terrified civilians scramble to locate underground shelters capable of shielding them from blast waves and radiation. And by midnight, the familiar world everyone once knew ceases to exist entirely. Emergency sirens wail non-stop through the streets of Washington, D.C. Moscow's residents rush underground into pre-built fallout bunkers, and European cities brace for potential missile strikes that may arrive at any moment. No one can predict which target the next warhead will hit. No side can claim clear military dominance, and no living soul can guarantee that tomorrow will even arrive. Inside an underground community shelter, a father grips his young daughter's hand tightly and reassures her that everything will eventually be fine. Even as he struggles to believe his own words, a soldier stands guard, staring up at the empty sky. He spent years undergoing rigorous training for this exact crisis, yet when the moment finally arrives, he grasps a devastating truth. There are no true victors in a nuclear war of this scale. The real enemy is not a rival nation across the ocean, it is the terrible weapons humanity built to wage combat. And mankind is about to learn the agonizing truth that the very tools created to safeguard civilization may ultimately lead to its total disappearance. The initial nuclear detonation does not immediately resemble the total end of humanity. From a distance, the blast almost carries an eerie, unnatural beauty, a flash of light far brighter than sunlight, a towering mushroom cloud billowing high into the atmosphere, and a split second of eerie silence before devastation cascades outward. Everything shifts irreversibly after that brief quiet. For witnesses watching from miles away, the scale of loss feels utterly incomprehensible. A metropolis standing for hundreds of years vanishes within a split second. Buildings constructed over countless generations crumble into dust instantly, and bustling thoroughfares once filled with millions of residents lie completely empty. The most horrifying element of this disaster is not the explosion itself, but the irreversible aftermath that follows. Survivors glance around at the charred wreckage and understand at once that the world they spent their lives inhabiting is gone for good. For thousands of years, human civilizations were built around a core shared conviction: each new generation would inherit a world more advanced than the one before it, with expanded knowledge, innovative technology, and greater opportunity for every person. On this catastrophic day, humanity creates the exact opposite outcome, forging a future far smaller, more limited and deprived than the past that preceded it. The opening wave of nuclear strikes does not conclude the conflict. Instead, it spawns a universal sense of terror that ripples across every continent. Every independent nation begins asking the same haunting question: will we be the next target to face annihilation? Countries that previously stayed neutral and uninvolved are suddenly trapped in the global crisis, forced to make desperate choices. Some fully mobilize their military forces, others seal off all national borders to block incoming refugees and threats, and a tiny few attempt to maintain neutral diplomatic stances despite mounting pressure. In an interconnected global system bound together by digital technology, international trade and cross-border political alliances, no territory can hide from the fallout of total war. The world's oceans transform into naval combat zones, orbital satellites designed for communication and surveillance become prime bombing targets, and cross-continental communication networks fail one after another, erasing the invisible infrastructure that once linked humanity as a single global community. The modern world was constructed over decades through widespread international cooperation, electronic devices assembled with parts manufactured across dozens of countries, microchips sourced from separate continents, fossil fuel energy shipped thousands of miles across open water, and agricultural produce transported to feed populations worldwide. Warfare dismantles these interconnected systems far faster than they could ever be rebuilt. A local supermarket may avoid direct missile impact, yet its shelves empty rapidly when transoceanic cargo ships stop arriving entirely. A city hospital's physical buildings may remain intact, yet it cannot operate without stable electricity pipelines and consistent shipments of vital medical supplies. An urban center might survive the initial round of nuclear blasts, yet it slowly collapses from resource shortages, broken supply lines and societal breakdown. This war is no longer defined solely by bombs and missile strikes. It evolves into a sustained assault against every foundational system that modern civilization relies on to function. Consider an ordinary, unremarkable family with no ties to military service or high-level political office. They bore no responsibility for igniting the global conflict and simply lived quiet, routine lives before disaster struck. Prior to the war's outbreak, their biggest daily worries centered on mundane concerns: monthly household bills, workplace stress, their children's school performance, and hopes and plans for the years ahead. All at once, every vision of a stable future evaporates completely. Internet servers shut down permanently, television broadcast signals cut out without warning, and mobile phones become useless pieces of hardware as cellular towers fail across the globe. The constant digital connectivity that defined modern daily life falls silent, and for the first time in multiple generations, people experience a profound isolation humanity had nearly forgotten existed. A teenager stares blankly at the dark, lifeless screen of their smartphone, realizing the device that once connected them instantly to every corner of the planet is now nothing more than inert glass and metal. Hospital medical staff rummage through empty supply closets with no way to restock critical medications. Skilled mechanics struggle to repair broken machinery without replacement parts or factory production chains to source new components. Farmers abandon industrial agricultural techniques and revert to the basic manual farming methods their ancestors used centuries earlier. The world does not end in one single, cataclysmic instant. It fractures slowly, piece by piece. This gradual unraveling may be even more terrifying than an instantaneous apocalypse, as humanity loses not only physical buildings and infrastructure, but also the unseen interconnected systems that hold organized society together. The greatest existential threat humanity faces does not originate from nuclear warheads themselves, it descends from the skies overhead. Thousands upon thousands of atomic explosions hurl massive volumes of thick smoke and fine ash particles high into Earth's upper atmosphere, steadily blocking the amount of sunlight able to reach the planet's surface and triggering a consistent global drop in average temperatures, plunging the entire world into a climatic shift scientists named nuclear winter decades earlier. The crisis extends far beyond the physical destruction of bombed cities. The planet's natural climate balance itself undergoes irreversible transformation. Summers turn unseasonably frigid, growing seasons for staple crops shrink drastically, and agricultural harvests fail on a worldwide scale. A civilization that once produced enough food to sustain billions of people now confronts the most basic survival challenge imaginable: how to feed its population through widespread famine. Nations that once competed fiercely for global power and territorial dominance now clash over far simpler, essential resources: clean drinking water, edible food stocks, and safe shelter from harsh weather and radiation. The grand metropolises built by humanity were designed around an era of material abundance. After the nuclear exchange, survival hinges entirely on managing crippling scarcity. Survivors of World War III learn a painful, humbling lesson: humanity spent thousands of years refining methods to build, innovate, and expand. Yet only a matter of days is sufficient to undo all of that progress. Years following the global nuclear exchange, survivors will reflect on pre-war civilization as if recounting ancient mythology. They pass down oral stories of a world filled with automated machinery, instant cross-continental communication technology, passenger aircraft capable of crossing entire oceans within hours, and human expeditions that landed astronauts on the surface of the moon. To generations born after the war, these feats sound utterly impossible, indistinguishable from ancient legends of mythical civilizations. Young survivors will pose endless questions to their elders. Did humans truly construct skyscrapers that pierced the clouds? Did they really build spacecraft capable of escaping Earth's atmosphere? Was genuine real-time global connection once accessible to every ordinary person? The answer to every question is yes. Humanity once possessed the ingenuity to achieve extraordinary, groundbreaking milestones. Yet that same intellectual capability which allowed mankind to travel to the stars also enabled the creation of weapons powerful enough to annihilate human civilization entirely. This becomes the central, unresolved contradiction of human history. Our species advanced far enough to alter planetary ecosystems on a global scale. Yet we frequently lack the collective wisdom to exercise restraint over the immense power we unlocked. Even after unfathomable global destruction, humanity refuses to vanish entirely, as endurance and adaptation have always defined our species across every era of crisis. The first generation born after the nuclear war devotes every waking hour to basic survival tasks: scavenging edible food supplies, constructing insulated, radiation-safe shelters, and forming tight-knit community groups to protect vulnerable residents from external threats and resource conflicts. The second post-war generation shifts focus towards slow, deliberate reconstruction efforts. They restore damaged functional machinery, dig through destroyed archives to recover lost scientific knowledge and practical skills, and erect small, localized population centers built around sustainability rather than endless expansion. Gradually, a new form of civilization begins to take shape across the scarred continents. Yet this new society bears almost no resemblance to the world before the war. Its people no longer chase unlimited industrial and population growth, nor do they believe technological advancement alone can solve every societal hardship. They carry the collective memory of what occurs when humanity gains overwhelming destructive power without accepting the corresponding moral responsibility. Their most vital, lasting invention is not a new weapon, advanced machine, or cutting-edge technical breakthrough. It is a hard-learned, universal lesson about restraint, communication, and the value of peace. 1 full century has passed since the day the first nuclear missiles launched into the sky. The world falls into an eerie, pervasive quiet, not a calm, peaceful silence, but an empty, desolate hush left behind by collapsed societies and abandoned cities. The metropolises that once stood as symbols of human innovation and progress lose that meaning entirely, reborn instead as permanent cautionary reminders of humanity's capacity for self-destruction. Across every continent, nature reclaims land once fully controlled by human industry and urban development. Mature trees grow straight through cracked, abandoned highway pavement. Thick vines and wild foliage cover the hollow frames of empty skyscrapers, and wild animal herds wander city streets once packed with millions of pedestrians. Planet Earth itself has endured the catastrophe, yet the advanced global civilization that shaped its surface has been permanently, irreparably altered. Within this alternate timeline, residents living in the year 2026 carry no smartphones, lack access to a worldwide internet network, and cannot board fast intercontinental flights to travel across the globe within a single day. Their reality is smaller in scale, slower in pace, and defined by constant caution against repeating the mistakes of the past. Adolescents growing up in this broken world examine faded photographs recovered from pre-war ruins, gazing at images of crowded downtown cityscapes, skies filled with commercial airplanes, and human figures standing on lunar terrain. They ask their elders a single profound question: how could our ancestors accomplish so many incredible feats, yet lose everything they built in a matter of days? The explanation behind this global collapse is complex and multifaceted. For humanity was never weak or lacking in potential. Our species created timeless art, groundbreaking scientific theories, and daring intercontinental exploration. That same ingenuity also birthed weapons capable of wiping organized civilization off the planet's surface. Humans were nearly destroyed not because of insufficient intelligence, but because scientific progress granted us unparalleled power long before society fully understood the heavy ethical responsibility that accompanied such capability. Early ancient humans who mastered fire reshaped the trajectory of life on Earth. 20th century scientists who split the atom redefined humanity's destructive potential. Modern engineers who built digital networks and industrial machinery rewrote global social systems. Every major scientific discovery expanded humanity's ability to alter our surroundings, unlocked new opportunities for growth and innovation, and simultaneously raised an unavoidable moral dilemma. Should humanity pursue a technological breakthrough simply because we possess the ability to create it? World War III stands as the most devastating real-world example of this critical ethical question left unanswered. Within our actual, real-world timeline, the Cold War concluded through diplomatic compromise, allowing human society to continue advancing forward into a new age of progress. Computer hardware shrank rapidly in size and cost. The internet connected billions of individual people across every continent. Space exploration missions expanded consistently year after year, and countless new technologies emerged to improve quality of life globally. This hopeful future never came to fruition in the alternate nuclear war timeline. Brilliant scientists who would have pioneered transformative new discoveries lost their lives in missile strikes. Children who would have grown up to change global society were never born, and revolutionary ideas capable of lifting humanity to new heights vanished before they could ever be fully developed or shared with the world. This represents the unseen, unquantifiable cost of large-scale warfare. Conflict destroys not only the tangible structures and lives that exist in the present moment, but also all untapped potential, unwritten innovations, and unfulfilled futures that might have existed if peace had prevailed. Every lost invention, abandoned dream, and unformed possibility counts as an unrecorded casualty of global war. Humanity tends to frame all of history as a zero-sum competitive game with clear victors and defeated sides. One nation claims military victory, an old empire collapses, and a new global power rises to fill the void. Nuclear warfare rewrites this entire framework of history, as no side can claim meaningful triumph after full-scale atomic exchange. Neither the United States nor the Soviet Union would achieve genuine victory over one another. No national flag would be raised to mark a hard-won triumph. No head of state could host victory celebrations, and no country could rebuild its society without permanent, crippling scars left by blast damage, radiation fallout, and mass loss of life. When civilization itself suffers irreversible harm, there are no winners at all, only traumatized survivors forced to rebuild from total ruin. This creates the key dividing line between conventional military conflicts and nuclear global war. Ordinary wars are fought to reshape and rewrite the future, while atomic warfare rages until no viable, hopeful future remains to be altered. The most compelling element of this alternate history is not the widespread destruction that follows the missile launches, but the critical choices made in the lead up to that catastrophic moment. Humanity had already unlocked the technological capability to self-destruct long before the Cuban Missile Crisis, meaning the core challenge of the Cold War era was never limited to weapons. Technology, it centered entirely on the choices made by world leaders and ordinary citizens alike. Throughout all of recorded human history, civilizations repeatedly faced crossroads where the easier, more instinctive decision leaned toward destruction, surrendering to anger, giving in to overwhelming fear, or acting out a desire for retaliation against perceived enemies. Modern civilization endures only because, time and again, people occasionally select a far more difficult path, practicing patience, engaging in sustained diplomatic negotiation, and seeking mutual understanding rather than violent confrontation. The Cold War remained free of full-scale combat not because human beings achieved moral perfection, but because during every critical crisis point, key decision-makers chose to refrain from pressing the final nuclear trigger. This restraint may rank among humanity's most remarkable collective accomplishments, not defeating a rival army in battle, but actively preventing a war that would end all progress. The camera pulls slowly backward, drifting away from Earth's surface and rising into the black void of outer space. The planet appears tiny and fragile amid endless darkness, a lone blue sphere floating surrounded by countless distant stars. Billions of people call this single small world home, separated by distinct languages, cultural traditions and core personal beliefs, yet bound together by their shared dependence on Earth's limited resources and livable ecosystems. Within the alternate nuclear war timeline, humanity learned the vital lesson of global unity only after suffering complete loss and ruin. In our real timeline, mankind retains the rare opportunity to absorb that lesson before catastrophe ever strikes. The most dangerous era in human history was never the moment scientists built ultra-powerful nuclear weapons. It arrived when humanity began to overlook exactly how devastating those weapons truly were. The story of World War III is not a narrative documenting a war that actually happened. It is a cautionary account of a conflict that came terrifyingly close to wiping out modern civilization entirely. It serves as a permanent reminder that historical development is shaped not solely by the battles humanity chooses to fight, but equally by the wars we collectively resolve to avoid. The long-term future of humanity will never be defined solely by how far we can travel into deep space, how much destructive power we can engineer, or how advanced our technological systems may become. Its trajectory hinges instead on whether mankind develops enough collective wisdom to survive the dangerous creations we ourselves design. The single greatest victory human civilization has ever secured was never the defeat of foreign adversaries, it was the conscious choice to refrain from destroying our own species.